Hey, welcome back, everybody. Great to see you as we end out 2024 here on New Year's Eve and hopefully having a wonderful final day of the year. And I'll tell you, as we go into 2025, things look very active in the weather department with round after round of Arctic air likely to settle into the eastern half of the country. And with that, bringing the potential for big time snow and ice. And this could cause major travel disruptions. This could cause problems to infrastructure and really just quite a concerning look here on the models as we go through the month of January. So if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit that bell so you'll be the first to get notified when a new video is posted with the latest model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance so you can be better prepared than anybody else out there. Also, go ahead, like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. I do also very briefly want to mention here at the beginning, thank you. We hit 20,000 subscribers early this morning, which is just completely insane, honestly. I started this channel basically 2 years ago right now, and if you were to tell me it would only take 2 years to hit a milestone like that, I would probably not believe you. So again, just want to say thank you to that. And thank you to all of those that have joined recently, or you folks that have been here for a long time. Really, all of you mean the world to me. All right, let's go ahead and start talking weather here because, again, a lot to discuss today as we enter this pattern change. Now, currently on satellite loop, you can see our storm system really sitting right over the Midwest, and this one is going to bring some active weather from snow to even the potential of a little bit of severe weather this evening, which I know is not what you want to hear, and trust me, it's not what I want to talk about either, but it is important and something that we are going to have to discuss at least a little bit. Other than that, though, folks, nothing really happening right now. It's really just this storm system that's crossing the country, and that will make way, though, for future storm systems. And more importantly, what this storm is doing is kind of supplying cold air to the lower 48, and you can see it well on radar here. We'll go ahead and zoom right in. We've got plenty of that active weather. With rain falling from Springfield to Indianapolis into portions of Ohio and coming down pretty good. This is very, heavy rain in certain spots. And as we go through this afternoon and the storm pushes eastbound, it will run into just a little bit of instability into portions of the mid-Atlantic. And that's when we'll need to watch for an isolated tornado threat, some strong gusting winds. And I do think hail will be a concern as well into portions of the country. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, zooming out again, really nothing else happening out there. Just this storm with the rain and a little bit of snow on the backside here into Iowa, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and even portions there of southern Michigan. And you can kind of see that on our watches, warnings, and advisory map. We'll start in the east. The blue boxes you see up towards New York State into the Erie and Buffalo area. These are winter storm watches. This system is really going to crank up the lake effect machine as it pulls away. And that snow will begin to pile up pretty quickly. Also, some northwest flow snow, and because of that, winter storm warnings now into effect right into the central apps through extreme western Maryland down into West Virginia. Going to get some heavy New Year's Eve and New Year's Day snow out of it there as well. And then all of these brown boxes that you see, that is for wind through the Ohio Valley. A pretty feisty little system. We've got pretty low pressure with this guy, so going to kick up those winds this afternoon and evening. So if you're shooting off any fireworks for New Year's Eve, definitely play it safe and just go ahead and know that that is going to be a risk with that wind blowing and that dry air funneling in behind the storm system. And then pretty foggy start down in Florida this morning as well. And out west, folks, finally you're getting a bit of a break, but don't get too excited because our next major storm is going to start out west and then cross the country. And that'll be the first big topic in today's video. Now, before we get there, let's also discuss kind of the future of our ongoing storm with our Meteorology in Minutes segment today and talk about a nice looking storm here. You can see the well-defined center here and watch it kind of pulling down all of this vorticity out of the Pacific, helping to kind of wind this thing up and spin it like a top, if you will. And that's one of those reasons that we're getting those wind advisories. Again, a pretty quick spinning low pressure, meaning the pressure is dropping. It's, wanting to spin faster and, kind of just the laws of physics working on its side today. Now, as we go throughout the day, this will continue to push eastbound, and it's right into this time frame this afternoon and evening. We're going to have strong diffluence on the right-hand side of the storm, especially with a storm like this. It's more circular shaped. You get even more forced descent, just meaning more lift at the surface, and we're going to get that, I think, right over the Delmarva into Virginia and even portions of the Carolinas, and that combined with just a little bit of instability, mainly actually in the upper levels, meaning it's more stable at the surface, but as you get higher up, becomes more unstable, that could produce some stormy activity, and that could produce hail, strong winds, and even an isolated tornado or two as this pulls off to the north and east, and then dying down as we get closer towards the midnight hour as we're changing over the calendar. But still some scattered showers, some snow into the northeast, and as this pulls away, that northwest flow and that lake effect will really begin to ramp up through Wednesday and into Thursday, and then that'll set the stage for the big storyline, which will be this weekend. Now, we do actually have a marginal risk from the Storm Prediction Center today due to this threat from Washington down to Richmond. Even clipping Virginia Beach and really just the Delmarva as a whole, even Philadelphia into the threat here. And this does include a small chance of an isolated tornado really right over the heart of the Delmarva through the entire state of Delaware into all of eastern Maryland here, including D.C., even southern Jersey, and Philadelphia points southward on I-95. So not a big day. Also, like I said, I do think we will have a bit of a hail threat, very cold air aloft, so do not be surprised to see hail as these storms work on through. Will be a very real concern throughout the afternoon and into the evening here as we end out 2024. And talk about a way to end it, that's pretty fitting there with severe weather, as this was one of the most active years for severe weather in quite some time. Alrighty, let's go ahead and time it out for you, and then we'll start getting to the fun stuff, and we'll start talking about snow. I know you don't want to hear about the severe weather stuff, so we'll move this ahead into time this afternoon and evening. Here we go. These are those strong storms I mentioned, even into kind of western PA here, eastern Ohio, West Virginia. Don't be surprised or caught off guard with a quick, strong storm that may work on through, including gusty winds and hail. But the tornado threat, like I said, really going to be confined to the Delmarva here through this evening. This is about 5 p.m. Eastern. And again, time is above my head in Eastern Standard Time. And that kind of keeps on working on through. You'll see this, this look of some of these storms, even potentially as far south as Charlotte, Raleigh this evening. I could see a couple strong storms, would not shock me at all. But on the backside, snow beginning to develop here through Michigan, back down into Indiana, Ohio, seeing those flakes begin to fly. And all of this will continue into the evening. And it's right around here. This is about the time the ball is dropping. Could definitely see some impacts in Times Square for those New Year's Eve festivities. Do not be surprised to see some heavy rain, maybe even, some strong gusty winds as this swings on through. And then overnight tonight, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow, it really changes to more of a wintry threat. Notice these little bands of snow coming in off the Great Lakes. Northwest flow going to pick up here into West Virginia, potentially even into the mountains of North Carolina, seeing some of that snow throughout your Wednesday afternoon, even into the interior Northeast. Plenty of these snow squalls working on through Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, and the lake effect machine really crank it up there. So how much snow are we talking? Well, not a huge snow system out of this one, but definitely enough worth mentioning. This is just the next 48 hours. You'll see some snow potentially here into Michigan, back down into Iowa, maybe a dusting or so. But I definitely think the upper UP of Michigan could get a couple of inches. Same thing for the northern mitten. You'll even see a little bit of a discrepancy here between maybe some National Weather Service offices where some are going with a little bit more than others. But overall, not a bad little system here. A couple of inches of snow for a lot of folks in the state of Michigan. And I do think a dusting upwards of an inch here through Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois from those snow squalls. Now, not everybody will get them, but somebody could get lucky and pick up a quick inch down that way, even if you don't see anything on the map. Could be something that tries to accumulate. So not a big deal by any means, but definitely a fun little snow event. We'll keep on going here into the Northeast. This is where snowfall totals will be higher, especially off of Lake Erie, where we could see half a foot of snow in the Erie area, especially, kind of up towards Buffalo a little bit. This usual corridor from Cleveland to Buffalo, that's going to be the big winner out of this storm with, again, isolated totals around half a foot plus. Not going to be out of the question. And the Tug Hill going to get some good snow too. Maybe a little less than that. A couple people could get half a foot, but overall, probably more like 3 to 5 inches there into northern New York. And then some of the higher terrains into the Adirondacks and the higher terrains of Vermont, New Hampshire. Also picking up some good snow in and around that half a foot range. And per usual, dropping off in intensity as you go down the mountainside. And then some good snow up here onto the Canadian border in and around Maine. And then the final place you'll kind of notice here down into West Virginia, that's where we have those winter storm warnings. Definitely a good snowfall, 5 to 8 inches, probably going to be a pretty safe bet on the usual places that went out on those highest peaks. And then I will briefly mention down here into North Carolina, not a lot of snow, but those northwest flow corridor areas, Boone, back down into kind of the Smokies, 1 to 3 inches of snow, not going to be hard to come by and isolated spots hitting that 3 to 5 mark, where usually the totals are the highest. All right, that gets us through kind of the near term. Now let's go ahead and focus on this major pattern change with big time snow, ice, and dangerous cold on the way. And before we quite get exactly to that, we are going to have a little bit of a teaser, I think, later this week. This is this Friday afternoon, and I did want to show this to you on the models. Notice our vorticity map. You're going to see a little piece of energy kind of develop back here into Nebraska and swing on through portions of the southeast and mid-Atlantic. This is something not being talked a lot about, but right here, this is Friday afternoon of this coming week, not far from now. You see a little kind of enhancement here of the jet stream with some spin occurring over the Carolinas. I do think that this could produce a bit of a clipper system that you're not going to hear a lot about, but we're getting close enough and it's being modeled well enough that I think it is worth talking about. So here's the latest NAM. This is starting, let's see, this is overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning, and you're seeing some of that inland snow into the northeast that we talked about, that northwest flow snow. But start looking back here towards Nebraska. You'll see a little piece of energy develop into Iowa. By Thursday morning, some light snow falling, and then that kind of dives down south through portions of Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, and then by the time we're getting into early Friday morning, folks, we've got a lot of energy flying around. Look at this precipitation down near Louisiana, some precipitation, building in there into the Ohio Valley, and these are going to try to link up just a little bit, and that energy could produce a pretty good little northwest flow snow event into Virginia, West Virginia, the foothills of Kentucky, the Cumberland Plateau, I think getting some snow out of this on Friday. And then overnight Friday and Friday afternoon, you notice some of this tries to kind of develop along the coastal sections of North Carolina and Virginia, and it could be cold enough. This could be a little bit of wet snow mixing with some rain. So, this could be the first little snow event of 2025, if you will, outside of the higher elevations, but definitely the higher elevations should pick up on a good little bit of snow out of this event. And not a big deal by any means, but I do think it is worth mentioning before we get to the big storm kind of going into this coming weekend and the start of next week. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about the setup here. It's all going to start with a big piece of Pacific energy, and really before it starts with that, it's starting with this big block of cold air. And you see this big dip in the jet stream. We've got these lower height values. That's going to cool things down in the east. And this storm is basically going to kind of try to ride that boundary a little bit going later into this weekend and into the start of next week. So here we go on the GFS. A big piece of energy diving through the Pacific, getting into the Rockies and ejecting from the Rockies by Sunday evening, going into early Monday morning. Strong low pressure on our American model, parked really right over the panhandles of Texas and Oklahoma. And to the north, you see this little piece up here. This is a block of very cold air that is moving southward and kind of syncing up with this piece of energy. And the combination of those two is going to potentially lead to a major winter storm somewhere, and I'm about to draw a big circle, so don't get too upset with me, but somewhere in this region, going to get major impacts out of this from either ice or snow. I think both are going to be on the table here. And you can see the American model really moves that right through the Ozarks and then pulls it north a little bit into Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, and then tries to phase it off the coast a little bit. So I think this is going to be a pretty good storm. But like I said, big impacts. European model also agrees, and this is less of a maybe scenario now and a lot more of a it's coming. It's a matter of who's going to get the big impacts, I think, for the weekend storm. So let's move it ahead. Here it is on the European. This is Friday night, moving into the Pacific Northwest, then diving down through the Rockies and getting into the plains, and pretty good model agreement. This is Sunday afternoon, so a little quicker on the European model, but placement is right about the same, right over the heart of Oklahoma, seeing the center of the storm. Again, cold air is going to be to the north. Also, cold air trying to slide down the apps here with some cold air damming. It's going to make this a complicated setup for whether we're going to see winter precipitation or not in certain areas, and you'll see that here in a second on the global models themselves. The European, though, I mean, folks, pretty good agreement here. Crosses right through the Ohio Valley and then crosses right through the Mid-Atlantic. And, when you get that look on both the models, you're going to find pretty good agreement on the operational runs, and that's what I'm going to show you here, starting with our American model into the weekend. So you'll notice snow chances and all beginning into the Rockies, and then boom, as we get to Sunday morning, that precipitation kind of attaching to the low, moving up out of the Gulf, and then to the north, you see this high pressure. This is pumping down cold Canadian air. So what you're getting is an overlap at the surface in some places of warm, humid Gulf air. And then above that, you're getting this. Actually, let me rewind that. At the surface, you're getting this cold Arctic air out of Canada, and then above it, you're getting that warm, humid Gulf air. Sorry, I had my physics rules and chemistry rules mixed up there. But because of that, you begin to see precipitation break out, and not all in a pretty rain or snow kind of format. You get this feisty battleground zone between the two. In that kind of pink and purple area, that is freezing rain and sleet, where that warm air and that cold air are kind of overlapping, and you've got the super cold air at the surface, you got the warm air above it. Not very conducive for snow, but very conducive for a potential ice storm, and you can see that on the American model Sunday afternoon. We've got a major ice storm breaking out through the Ozarks into southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and then sliding east. The GFS even brings major ice into Nashville, but to the north, it's a big snowstorm through St. Louis, Kansas City, seeing all of that big, beautiful blue showing up, no ice mixing there, at least on this model run, and then pushing eastbound with big ice into East Tennessee. And then this is where things get kind of interesting for the Carolinas. This is now within a week. This is this coming Monday morning and afternoon. See the placement of this high pressure? This is trying to produce some cold air damming. And what this could do is have enough cold air that even ice gets into the upstate of South Carolina, the Piedmont and the foothills of North Carolina, and the mountains as well, seeing a major ice storm on the latest run of the GFS, and then to the north through Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, more of just snow and not so much of that ice. And then this kind of moves into the east, still dealing with ice into the Carolinas by Monday afternoon and evening, and then seeing a little bit of snow trying to get into the northeast as the storm phases off the coast. Then you even get some snow along the I-95. So this is a classic Miller B setup on the models. And basically what a Miller B is well, what I just showed you. You get low pressure to develop out into the plains, usually Colorado low, and that's basically what this is going to be. And then it rides through the Ohio Valley, but what happens is it kind of loses steam here, and then a new low forms along a favorable baroclinic zone along the coast, and that's basically what the American model is showing, and the European model is backing it up on. So I'll show you the European now. Again, latest model run. Here comes the formation of that Colorado low later this weekend, and it's a very similar story, folks. We've got a major winter storm, that's battleground zone of ice on one side, rain to the south, and then snow to the north. And I don't want you to focus so much on exact placement of this battleground zone, exactly who's seeing snow, who's seeing ice, who's seeing rain. That part's going to change, but what you really need to focus on is the fact that all of our major global models are showing a major ice storm and snowstorm somewhere from Kansas all the way potentially to the Atlantic Ocean by later this weekend and early next week. The European, though, a tad further north. So places like Nashville, points south, all rain here, but a major snowstorm through Cincinnati, Louisville, major ice storm into central Kentucky, into just south of St. Louis. They're seeing big ice as we start next week. And then this moves into the mid-Atlantic. It's a big snowstorm, actually, don't faint, but on this model into the DC area, up through Philadelphia, seeing some good snow. The Delmarva trying to pick up on snow with a track like this, and then phasing off the coast. And one big difference is down here into South Carolina and North Carolina. European model not showing any wintry precipitation in Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, or Raleigh, or even Asheville for that matter, where the American had big ice down that way to start next work week. And obviously that would cause all sorts of havoc for starting school back up or going back to work or whatever plans you may have. But what they do agree on is a swath of major snow and a swath to the south of that of big ice, and then rain to the south of both of those. And that, I think, is going to be pretty likely. And if we look at the ensembles, I'll tell you, I think I'm leaning towards the European on this one. And I'll tell you, it's pretty simple. This is the GFS model, and its chance of at least an inch of snow falling on its ensembles. And where do you see, the big bullseye? Well, right up here to the north, through kind of St. Louis points north through Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. I do think we will get big snow in that region. But you notice to the south, and generally speaking, sleet and snow kind of show up the same here. Not many members bringing that into Nashville or even North Carolina or South Carolina. Some members, yes, absolutely. It's just not a lot of them. So I'd lean more towards the European right now and its thinking, and you can see that, again, aligning with the ensembles here, still showing you the GFS. But I do want to mention, notice those snow chances even getting into Pennsylvania, D.C., Philadelphia, by the time we get into next Tuesday and potentially even Wednesday. Same story on the European ensembles. Here's the big signal for snow to start it off. A beautiful swath from northern Missouri through the Ohio Valley into Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, West Virginia, even into the Pittsburgh area, and snow chances into the Delmarva, Philadelphia, already running a good 50 to 60% chance of accumulating snow. And this is a week out, so that's definitely a pretty good mean on the ensembles for that potential as it works on through. Now, one big question is going to be, well, how much snow? And I did not actually pull this up ahead of time, but I will now. Because, oh, heck, I'm also interested. So this is just the ensemble mean on the European model. So, take it with a grain of salt. And I'm showing this to you not for locations, but just to get an idea of whoever sees the biggest snow could see generally this much. European, a big swath on the ensembles here of maybe 4 to 5, potentially half a foot of snow right through the heart of the country, through Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. In fact, I would go out on a limb here and say I think whoever gets the most snow could see half a foot to a foot of snow out of this event. But I do think this general location is going to be the best suited to see it, from somewhere, we'll say St. Louis over to the mountains of West Virginia. That general corridor probably going to be the hardest hit by snowfall. And then we do see some snow on the model into Philadelphia, DC, the Delmarva, and potentially even up into New York City. Now, unless the storms trend a little bit further north here on the models, I think, funnily enough, Boston rather, into Maine and up into the interior Northeast, less your storm here, and for once, actually more of a Mid-Atlantic and Ohio Valley storm system compared to everything before this year, where it's been all the interior Northeast and even northern sections of the I-95. Now, another concern here is going to be ice, unfortunately, and this is the European model. Total ice, and getting a general idea of the swath here that we're seeing and where we're seeing it, from Virginia right over to Kansas, with the hardest hit areas right into southern Missouri. There we go, the Show Me State. I've got that one in the brain. Even down into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and into the heart of Kentucky. And the latest model, folks, I mean, this is more than an inch of ice in places. That would be a catastrophic ice storm, and it's not the only model showing it. I'll show you the Canadian model. Same general idea, big ice totals upwards of an inch, this time a little bit further south on the Canadian into the Ozarks, into portions of western Tennessee there, and then through much of Kentucky. And then the GFS is the one that's kind of the Lone Ranger right now and gets that ice even into upstate South Carolina, northern Georgia, and really that swath just much further south through the entire state of Tennessee and the northern half of Arkansas. So it'll be interesting to see where this shifts and where it goes, but what I want you to take home here is between these two maps. Let me back it up a little bit. Big swath of snow to the north, a big swath of ice somewhere kind of in between, and then to the south of that, it'll be an all rain threat, maybe even a slight severe weather threat. So it's going to be a big storm, folks. It's going to have major impacts as we get closer. We'll pin down exact locations and details and totals more in depth. But go ahead and prepare now if you're in any of those areas that I just talked about, and those are millions of Americans. So a lot of folks are going to get those impacts. So just definitely start thinking about those preparations. All right, another thing that you need to prepare for with this setup is dangerous cold. This is Saturday afternoon temperatures on the GFS model, and you'll notice this big block of cold to the north. That's what's producing that snow and ice as it's overlapping with these kind of warmer, humid Gulf temperatures trying to swing northward. That's where you're getting that big battleground zone of ice in between. But as the storm pulls away, all that cold air is going to funnel southward, and you can see that here. This is Sunday morning of next week. So a little less than a week now. Low temperatures getting down into the teens, into the Ohio Valley potentially, down to the 20s, all the way down towards the Florida Panhandle. And this locks into place, folks. You'll see the storm kind of moving through here with that little resurgence of warmer air there Monday afternoon. That could produce a small severe weather threat. Another thing I'll mention, the reason the GFS has that ice and wintry precipitation even into the Carolinas is this look right here. You see this little bit of cold air damming setting up Monday, and that combined with that overlapping warm air is leading to that icing threat. Like I said earlier, I'm leaning towards the European right now. I think it's probably handling it a little bit better. I think most of the winter precip is going to be a little bit further north than that, but do not rule it out. If we get strong enough cold air damming, absolutely could see an icy mess down into the Carolinas, at least the foothills and the Piedmont of the Carolinas more specifically. Behind the storm, though, like I said, here comes that very cold Arctic air next Wednesday morning, so a little more than a week from now. You see that Arctic air mass. These are temperatures, folks. These are not wind chills. We're talking negative 15 to negative 20 into the heartland of the country, right into the Midwest. That is brutal cold air on the GFS model, and it locks into place and does not go anywhere. And what this does is sets the stage for storm potential number 2 as we get closer towards the 10th of January. And here it is on the models. This is our energy map once again on the GFS. This is the big storm we just talked about this coming Monday afternoon. That gets out of here, and what happens, folks, is a little piece of energy begins to dive out west. You see this right here? This is a lot of energy, and then to the north we have our cold energy. So you got the warm tropical kind of moisture energy, if you will, and then you have that Arctic energy to the north. And what the GFS does on its latest run, and it's been teasing this idea, all of the models have been teasing it, is linking these two up right into this time frame. Here we go. A more pronounced piece of kind of northern stream energy, as we say, combined with very strong southern stream energy. This is the 9th of January, so about 7 to 10 days from now. And what happens is this cranks up, these two combine, and you get a classic Miller A look. Big block of cold air diving south, producing the cold temperatures, and then the southern energy riding right along favorable baroclinic zone along the Gulf Coast and up the Atlantic seaboard, and you get a good old-fashioned Miller A, something we haven't seen in quite some time. And this is a promising look on the model. So there's the first storm. That's the one we just talked about on the GFS. Here comes the second piece of energy beginning all the way into Texas around the 8th or so on this model. And check this out. You get winter precipitation all the way down into Dallas, not far from Houston, potentially Austin, San Antonio. And then by the time we get to the afternoon of the 8th on this model, and this is now within 10 days, folks. This is not La La Land. I mean, it's far away, yes, but it's not, 15 days out. This is about 8 days or so out. You've got snow and ice all the way down into Louisiana, Mississippi, and watch this storm crank up, excuse me, on the model here. Well down south. This is deep south snow and ice into Shreveport, potentially Baton Rouge, Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, and then this storm cranks up along the coast, and we get a classic Miller A snowstorm into the Carolinas by the morning of the 10th, and this tries to ride up the eastern seaboard on the GFS, and it just kind of gets kind of wonky there at the end. But behind it, what else do you see? Another shot of dangerously cold Arctic air. So if we do get snow down here into Texas, Louisiana, this kind of corridor I have drawn, even into the Carolinas, snow or ice, anything frozen, that's going to be a problem because, one, obviously you get the problems from it, but behind it, cold air looks to lock into place, and that could keep whatever is on the ground there for an extended period of time. And should you get a big storm, that would promote long-term business closures, school closures, and all sorts of problems. So obviously a ways away, we still got the first storm to get through, but I'll show you the European model, folks. It's the same idea. Here comes that energy right into that time frame, right into here. This is about the 8th or 9th, big Baja low, northern energy swinging down, and these two link up, and what they do next is absolutely beautiful for snow fans in the southeast. You just get a major, again, kind of energy link up here that produces a big-time Miller A storm. And I'll spare you all the gory details. I'll just show you the model run. Here is the European. There's the first storm we talked about. Here comes the second. Same idea, cranking up over Texas around the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, and then sliding right on through the southeast. A major winter storm into Tennessee, northern Mississippi, Alabama. This is the morning of the 10th, getting into Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, and then riding up the eastern seaboard. You get a snow and icy mix. And then a bit of a nor'easter cranks up there, and you get a huge snowstorm into the I-95 and then pulls out here. And same story, major Arctic air settles in behind it on both models. So what are the chances this even happens? Or are we just, kind of throwing darts at the wall and hoping for the best? Well, the ensembles look pretty good. Here's the first snow signal on the European that we mentioned. Here comes the second signal. Look at this diving south into Texas, folks. This is a good signal for snow this far out. Now you're thinking, well, Gerald, this says, a 15, 20% chance of snow. That's not that good. Well, when you're 200 hours out and the models have been showing it run after run, not a bad look at all for our snow fans. And then this kind of gets into the southeast, and you see that snow chances picking up into the Carolinas, into Alabama, Georgia around the 10th and 11th of January, and then swings on up the eastern seaboard with a pretty good snow signal. And the GFS is also kind of on board with this with its ensembles. Here's that second signal for snow. Not a big one, but you see kind of that uptick in ingredients down here into the south. The ensembles this far out, they're going to have different timing, which is going to affect the overall percentage chance of this happening on the model here, but still a pretty good shot, I think, that we get a winter storm there in that time frame. And then by the time we get even later on, the GFS really keeps chances pretty high here. Excuse me, I'm losing steam here at the end, along the eastern seaboard. Now, the other big problem is going to be temperatures, and this is going to be right after this is right after the first storm. I promise I'll get through the end of this. Well below average temperatures, 10, 20 degrees below normal, and then you get a second shot after that potential second storm around the 10th, 11th, and 12th. Here is another shot of Arctic air. So we're going to get thrown in the freezer for a while here, all the way down to Florida. The Gulf Coast is going to see major Arctic cold out of this, and just going to be a pretty big deal, I think, for many folks. So definitely stay tuned. Like I said, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely go ahead and do so. Like the video if you haven't already and you enjoyed it, and comment, let me know where you're watching from. Alrighty, folks, with that said, have a great one. Stay safe out there, stay dry, and I'll see you all next time.